Attention. The case you are about to hear has been concealed for decades. Before we begin, write in the comments where you are listening from and what time it is at this exact moment. They said a man without a shadow was a man beyond death's reach. That is what the Brotherhood promised its members in 1937 Detroit, when the city's furnaces still burned day and night, when some men had everything and others nothing at all. It all began in Detroit, United States of America, during the winter of 1937. The automobile industry had recovered somewhat from the worst years of the Depression, but the scars remained visible throughout the city. Abandoned homes lined certain streets. Men still gathered in alleyways, speaking in hushed tones about work, about opportunity, about survival. According to documents recovered from a sealed chest in 1976, the Brotherhood of the Divided Light first appeared in city records in March 1935. They purchased a former textile warehouse on Jefferson Avenue near the Detroit River. The deed was signed by 7 men whose backgrounds revealed a curious pattern. Each had risen from poverty to considerable influence within just 3 years. Each had connections to both industrial leaders and figures known to operate in less reputable circles. The official records described the building as headquarters for an investment group, but handwritten notes in the margins of a city inspector report suggest otherwise. The inspector wrote that all windows had been covered with heavy black fabric, that strange symbols had been painted on interior walls, that a room in the basement contained 7 chairs arranged in a circle around what appeared to be a silver bowl. The inspector never filed a follow-up report. His name appears again only once in city employment records. A brief note indicates he resigned his position and left Detroit in April 1935. Marcus Holt was the first documented member to speak of the Brotherhood outside its walls. Marcus had been a factory worker at the Highland Park Ford plant, one of thousands laid off during the production scaling of 1932. By 1936, he owned 3 apartment buildings and had established a private lending business that served desperate men still struggling from the Depression. According to a statement provided to Detroit police officer James Kendrick, Marcus had been invited to join the Brotherhood by Elias Werner, a banker who had weathered the financial collapse with unusual success. What follows is a transcript of Marcus Holt's statement, dated February 10, 1937. The original document was discovered among Officer Kendrick's personal effects after his death in 1964. The statement was never filed officially with the department. Elias said there were powers in this world that men have forgotten, that the ancient ones knew things we have lost, that some of these things were hidden in plain sight, like our shadows. Our shadows, he said, were more than just the absence of light. They were reflections of our souls on the material plane, and like anything of value, they could be traded. The first meeting I attended, there were 14 of us, men from different walks of life, a factory foreman, a physician, a judge, several businessmen. We gathered in a room with no windows. 7 black candles provided the only light. Elias spoke of an old text they had discovered, translated from German, which itself had been translated from something much older. He spoke of a ritual that would sever a man's shadow from his body. The shadow would be collected and kept by the Brotherhood, and in exchange, the man would receive influence beyond his natural abilities. People would bend to his will, opportunities would appear, wealth would follow. I thought it was madness, of course, but these were successful men, respected men, and I was desperate. The next morning I found an envelope containing $100 on my doorstep. A gesture of goodwill from the Brotherhood, the note explained. I used it to pay 2 months of overdue rent. The interviewing officer noted that Marcus appeared agitated throughout his statement, frequently looking over his shoulder as if expecting to see someone there. He insisted on being interviewed in a brightly lit room and became distressed when clouds momentarily darkened the space. According to archived newspaper accounts, Marcus Holt was found dead in his home on February 12, 1937, 2 days after providing his statement. The cause was reported as suicide. A single line in the medical examiner's notes mentions that no shadow was visible beneath the hanging body, despite the strong lamp positioned directly behind it. This detail was omitted from all public reports. Officer Kendrick began what appears to have been an unofficial investigation into the Brotherhood following Marcus Holt's death. His personal journal, discovered alongside the statement, documents his initial skepticism. February 15, 1937. Followed up on Holt's claims about this Brotherhood. The building on Jefferson exists as described. Heavy curtains on all windows, no signage, men entering and exiting at unusual hours, mostly well-dressed. I stationed myself at a coffee shop across the street and observed for 6 hours. 17 men entered, 15 exited. I will return tomorrow. February 23, 1937. Met with Dr. Phillips at City Hospital regarding Holt's autopsy. Phillips seemed nervous. Said all was in order. Death by asphyxiation. When I mentioned the note about the shadow, he claimed it must have been a mistake. Said the lighting in the morgue plays tricks. Asked me to leave his office. As I was leaving, he said something strange. He asked if I had been feeling watched lately. I said no. He nodded and said, "That is good. Keep it that way." March 2, 1937. Located Elias Werner, well-respected at First Detroit Bank. Made arrangements to meet him under the pretense of seeking financial advice. He agreed immediately, though I had not mentioned my name or position. The next entry in Kendrick's journal is dated March 5th. I met Werner yesterday. He knew who I was before I introduced myself. Smiled and said the Brotherhood had been expecting my interest. Said that men of observation like myself were valuable. He offered me a place among them. Said they could help with my son's medical bills. I never told him about my son, never told anyone at the precinct. Werner said their practice was ancient, that the shadow was a burden that held men back from their true potential. He said they had refined a method to sever it painlessly and store it for safekeeping. Said the procedure granted remarkable benefits. When I asked what happened to the shadows, he simply smiled. I told him I needed time to consider. He said I had until the spring equinox. No longer. As I was leaving, he handed me an envelope. Inside was $500 and the name of a specialist in Chicago who could help my boy. $500, 6 months of my salary. On March 19, 1937, Kendrick wrote his final entry on the matter. I went back to the building on Jefferson today, watched as men entered. Each walked differently upon leaving, straighter, more assured. But their movements seemed slightly wrong, as if they were being directed rather than moving naturally. I stayed until sunset. That was when I noticed. As the sun lowered, the shadows on the sidewalk grew longer. Every man or woman passing cast a dark silhouette, except those exiting the Brotherhood. They cast nothing at all. I will attend their equinox gathering. I must know the truth. For Robert, for my boy. Kendrick did not report for duty on March 21st, the date of the spring equinox. According to precinct attendance records, he called in sick for the first time in 11 years of service. When he returned 3 days later, fellow officers noted a marked change in his demeanor. Witness statements collected during an unrelated investigation in 1942 include testimony from Officer Thomas Brady regarding Kendrick's transformation. Jimmy was always a straight arrow. By the book, the kind of cop who believed in the rules. After that week he took off sick. Something changed. He stopped talking about his kid, stopped showing us photos. When I asked about little Robert, he looked at me like he didn't understand the question. But the strange thing was how his career took off. Within 2 months, he was promoted to detective. By the end of the year, he was working directly with the commissioner. Doors just opened for him. People listened when he talked, even the big shots who never gave beat cops the time of day. The only odd thing, and I know this sounds strange, was that he started avoiding certain lighting, would never stand in direct sunlight, always positioned himself near walls or under cover. Once, I walked into his office and caught him staring at the floor beside his desk, at the place where his shadow should have been, just staring. When he saw me, he closed the blinds, said he had a headache from the glare. By 1940, James Kendrick had risen to become the youngest police commissioner in Detroit history. His signature appears on hundreds of official documents, authorizing everything from department budgets to investigation closures. His career was marked by a dramatic reduction in investigations related to certain prominent citizens and businesses, many of whom were later connected to the Brotherhood. Documents recovered from bank vaults following the 1967 riots include membership ledgers for the Brotherhood of the Divided Light. The records show growth from the original 7 founders to over 300 members by 1940. Names include industrialists, judges, physicians, police officials, and city council members. A detailed accounting ledger indicates substantial monthly dues from each member. More disturbing are entries labeled shadow maintenance, with significant sums allocated to an unnamed recipient or service. An internal document titled Protocol for Initiates explains the Brotherhood's recruitment approach. Members were instructed to identify men of influence or potential who were facing crisis, financial ruin, family illness, public scandal. The vulnerability of desperation made them ideal candidates. The document states the subject must choose to surrender his shadow willingly, but need not fully comprehend what this entails. Emphasis should be placed on the immediate benefits, relief from their current distress, new opportunities, the protection of the Brotherhood. The maintenance costs should only be disclosed after the separation is complete. The exact nature of the ritual remained vague in most documents. However, a partial description was found in what appears to be a training manual for senior members. The separation must occur at the juncture of light and dark, dawn, dusk, or precisely noon. The initiate stands before the silver mirror while the master traces the outline where shadow meets light. Essential oils prepared according to the ancient formula are applied at 7 points along this boundary. The initiate recites the oath of division while the master applies the blade. The severing causes no physical pain, but subjects often report a sensation of profound emptiness immediately afterward. This passes within hours. The shadow, once separated, must be collected in vessels of pure silver and transferred to the chamber for preservation. At no point should a separated shadow be exposed to direct sunlight. What is notably absent from any recovered documents is a clear explanation of how the shadows were preserved, or why they required ongoing maintenance costs. The Brotherhood expanded its influence throughout Detroit during the 1940s, coinciding with the city's industrial boom during World War II. Several key military production contracts were awarded to companies controlled by Brotherhood members. Building permits show the Jefferson Avenue location underwent extensive renovation in 1944, including the addition of 3 sub-basement levels. The first documented negative effects among members appears in private correspondence between Elias Werner and Harold Fisher, the Brotherhood's treasurer, dated July 1946. The Grayson situation requires immediate attention. His behavior has become erratic since the missed maintenance payment. 3 other members have reported similar symptoms, though less severe. Dr. Ainsworth suggests increasing the preservation solution concentration, but this will raise costs significantly. We cannot sustain the current membership if the maintenance requirements continue to escalate. More troubling is the matter of containment. The specimens in the lower chamber have exhibited increased activity during the monthly inspections. Ainsworth reports movement when no one is near the vessels. The silver lining appears to be deteriorating faster than anticipated. We may need to consider alternatives. On a personal note, I find myself unable to recall certain memories from before my separation. My wife mentioned our honeymoon yesterday, and I could not picture her face as she described it. Is this something you have experienced? A response from Fisher, dated 2 days later, was brief. The Council has approved the increased solution concentration. Notify Ainsworth to proceed. Members will be assessed accordingly. Regarding memory concerns, I have noticed similar effects. Dr. Ainsworth assures me this is an expected side effect and not cause for alarm. The benefits still far outweigh these minor inconveniences. As for Grayson, the Council has voted. Proceed with Resolution 17. Edward Grayson, a prominent attorney and Brotherhood member since 1939, was reported missing on July 28, 1946. Police records indicate a cursory investigation that was closed after 3 days. The detective assigned to the case was Thomas Hayward, identified in Brotherhood ledgers as a member since 1943. By 1950, the Brotherhood had expanded to other major industrial cities, including Chicago, Cleveland, and Pittsburgh. A centralized leadership remained in Detroit, with local chapters operating under strict protocols transmitted from the original group. This expansion coincided with increasing reports of unusual incidents involving members. Hospital records from across these cities show a pattern of Brotherhood members seeking treatment for similar symptoms: insomnia, memory loss, unusual sensitivity to light, persistent sensation of being watched. In several cases, patients reported seeing their own faces in reflective surfaces, but with expressions they were not making. Dr. Helen Carter, a psychiatrist at Harper Hospital in Detroit, maintained detailed notes on 3 patients connected to the Brotherhood. Her private research journal, discovered after her death in 1979, contains observations that she never published professionally. June 12, 1952. Patient C continues to deteriorate. Believes he is being followed by something he cannot see. Reports feeling portions of himself missing. Initially diagnosed as acute anxiety with possible schizophrenic features. However, the specific nature of his delusions and the similarity to cases B and D suggests something more unusual. All 3 men are highly successful professionals who experienced sudden career advancement approximately 5 years ago. All 3 report involvement in what they describe as an investment group that met on Jefferson Avenue. All 3 demonstrate the same unusual symptoms when observed long-term. They cast no shadow in direct light. This is not a delusion or trick of the eye. I have verified this phenomenon repeatedly under controlled conditions. Furthermore, all 3 exhibit unusual behavior around reflective surfaces. They avoid mirrors. When forced to confront their reflection, they become highly agitated. Patient D claimed his reflection smiled at him when he did not. I have requested brain studies for all 3, but my requests have been denied by hospital administration. Today I was visited by 2 men claiming to represent the patients' families. They suggested I transfer the cases to Dr. Reed. When I refused, they indicated my research funding might be in jeopardy. I recognized one of the men as a member of the hospital board, July 3, 1952. My patients have been transferred against my recommendation. My research notes were removed from the hospital files. I continue these observations in private with great concern for both my former patients and potentially others suffering from the same condition. I believe whatever investment group these men were involved with subjected them to something that has caused both psychological and, impossibly, physical effects. The absence of a shadow defies scientific explanation, yet I have witnessed it firsthand. More disturbing is my growing suspicion that this group holds significant influence within the hospital, and perhaps beyond. When I mentioned my concerns to Dr. Patel, he became visibly uncomfortable and advised me to drop the matter entirely. Later, I saw him speaking with the same hospital board member who had threatened my funding. Dr. Carter's journal continues with attempts to locate and monitor her former patients from a distance. Her entries become increasingly paranoid, describing cars parked outside her home and calls to her office where no one spoke. Her final entry, dated September 10th, 1952, consists of a single line. "They are outside my door. They think our shadows are just the absence of light. They are wrong. They are so wrong." Harper Hospital records indicate Dr. Carter took a leave of absence in September 1952. She never returned to her position. A death certificate shows she died of a stroke in 1979, having spent the last 27 years in a private care facility upstate. Throughout the 1950s, the Brotherhood continued to expand its influence, though internal documents suggest growing concerns about what they referred to as containment costs and maintenance stability. A fire at the Jefferson Avenue building in 1958 destroyed portions of the original structure. Fire department records described the blaze as electrical in origin, though several responding firefighters provided unusual statements. According to Lieutenant Frank Miller, "We contained the fire to the eastern section of the building. The strange thing was the basement level. Despite heavy smoke throughout the structure, the basement was completely clear, but cold, colder than should be possible. And the silver containers down there, dozens of them, sealed tight. When we asked the building manager about them, he said they were just water tanks, but they were vibrating. I swear I heard whispering coming from inside them." The fire report was amended 2 days later, with no mention of unusual conditions or containers in the basement. Lieutenant Miller was promoted the following month and transferred to administration, where he never again served on an active fire response. Following the fire, the Brotherhood relocated its headquarters to a larger facility outside the city proper. Property records show the purchase of a former sanatorium on 50 acres of land near Bloomfield Hills. The transaction was completed by a holding company traced back to 7 different corporations, each controlled by Brotherhood members. Between 1958 and 1964, police reports from across Detroit and surrounding counties show a marked increase in unusual disappearances. In each case, the missing individual was last seen near their home or workplace. In each case, investigators reported finding unusual black stains at the scene, described variously as oil, tar, or ink. And in each case, the investigation was quickly closed without resolution. A young detective named Robert Kendrick, son of the former commissioner, began to notice the pattern. According to his personal notes found in 1975, he identified 43 such cases before being ordered to stop his unofficial investigation. May 4, 1964, connected another disappearance to the pattern. Black stains found in the victim's apartment. Case officially ruled as voluntary departure, but something is wrong. The victim's shoes were still by the door. Who leaves without their shoes in April? This makes 43 cases with the same features. When I brought my findings to Captain Lewis, he became agitated, asked where I got my information, then told me I was being reassigned effective immediately. Something about this frightens him. May 12, 1964. Found my father's effects in the attic. Mother never went through them after he passed last year. Discovered a journal and files related to something called the Brotherhood of the Divided Light. His notes from 1937 mention men without shadows, the same phrase the witness used in the Miller disappearance last month. I remember how Father always stayed away from direct light, how he would never attend my baseball games if they were during daylight hours, how he kept every room at home dimly lit. Mother called it his migraine condition. Now I wonder. May 18th, 1964. Located the original Brotherhood building on Jefferson, now abandoned since the fire. Gained entry through a broken window, most rooms empty. Found stairs to the basement. The temperature dropped at least 20 degrees as I descended. The basement contained nothing but 7 chairs arranged in a circle. The floor within the circle was stained black. the stain similar to those found at the disappearance sites. As I examined it, I heard whispering. No one was there, but the sounds seemed to come from the stain itself, words just below the threshold of understanding. I took a sample of the black substance. We'll attempt to have it analyzed quietly. The journal shows no entries for nearly a week, then continues with increasingly disturbed observations. May 25th, 1964. The stain sample is gone from my desk. No one admits removing it. Found a business card in its place. The Brotherhood of the Divided Light. An address in Bloomfield Hills. A date, tomorrow night. And a note. It read, "Your father left something in our keeping. It has waited for you. I know I should report this. Bring in others, but who can I trust? If father was involved, how high does this go? Captain Lewis is definitely connected, maybe others. I need to see for myself what this brotherhood is, what they had of fathers." May 26th, 1964. I am writing this before I leave for the address. If something happens, I want there to be a record. I loaded my service weapon and a backup, told Marion I was following up on a lead, going to the Bloomfield Hills address at the appointed time. The journal contains no further entries. Robert Kendrick was reported missing on May 27th, 1964. The official investigation concluded he had abandoned his position and likely left the state. His badge and gun were never recovered. His wife Marion maintained until her death that he had been investigating something important and would never have left voluntarily. In a statement to a friend, recorded in 1970, Marion Kendrick revealed additional details. The night before Rob disappeared, he told me he had discovered something about his father, something that explained the way James had changed when Rob was a boy. He mentioned a group that his father had joined. Said they took something from the men who joined them. The next morning, Rob seemed distant. When I asked if he was still going to follow up on his lead, he looked confused. Then he smiled and said he had been promoted, that everything was going to be better now. His whole demeanor had changed overnight. He kissed me goodbye and said he had a meeting with the commissioner. That was the last time I saw him as himself. 3 days later, he came home late. He looked like Rob, but he didn't move like him, didn't talk like him, kept the lights dim, wouldn't look me in the eyes. When I confronted him, he said he was tired from his new responsibilities, said his promotion meant he would be working directly with the leadership, never specified what leadership. A week later, he said he needed to leave town for work, kissed me goodbye. His lips were cold. As he walked to the car, the sun broke through the clouds. He cast no shadow on the driveway. None at all. Robert Kendrick resurfaced in 1967 as a special advisor to the Detroit Police Department during the July riots. Multiple accounts from officers describe him as unnaturally calm during the crisis, with several noting his habit of remaining in shadowed areas or vehicles. He was credited with developing containment strategies that several civil rights organizations later condemned as excessively harsh. Following the riots, a series of raids targeted suspected agitators throughout the city. According to sealed court documents discovered during an archive digitization in 1992, many of these raids were conducted without warrants or probable cause. The documents include a list of properties targeted, with one address circled in red: the former sanatorium in Bloomfield Hills. The raid on the Bloomfield facility occurred on August 12, 1967. No official report was ever filed. However, the personal journal of Officer Michael Collins, who participated in the operation, provides a disturbing account. "We hit the old sanatorium at midnight. 20 officers, full tactical gear. The place looked abandoned from the outside, but inside everything was pristine. Modern security doors, expensive furnishings. The first 2 floors contained offices, meeting rooms, what looked like medical examination areas. Lieutenant ordered us to the lower levels. That's where we found them. 3 sub-basement levels, the temperature dropping with each floor we descended. The bottom level was freezing, literally freezing. Our breath clouded in front of us, and the walls were lined with silver containers. Hundreds of them, each about the size of a coffin but oval-shaped, each with a name engraved on a brass plate. I recognized some of the names. Business leaders, judges, our own commissioner. Captain Kendrick was with us. When we discovered the containers, he ordered everyone out, except himself and 3 senior officers, said it was a sensitive situation that required special handling. But as we were leaving, one of the rookies accidentally knocked into a container. The lid shifted slightly. What came out wasn't gas or liquid. It looked like black smoke, but it moved with purpose. Formed a shape. A human shape, like a 3-dimensional shadow. It lunged at the rookie, wrapped around him. He screamed once, then stood up straight, smiling, said everything was fine in a voice that wasn't his. His eyes had gone completely black. Kendrick shot him without hesitation, then ordered a complete evacuation and called for a containment team. As we were leaving, I saw him make a call. He said only, "The primary vessels have been compromised. Implement Protocol Eclipse." By morning, the entire property had been burned to the ground. Official reports called it a tragic accident. All records of the raid were purged from department files. In the weeks following the fire, 27 prominent Detroit citizens died under various circumstances: heart attacks, car accidents, apparent suicides. Each had been a long-time member of the Brotherhood, according to the partial membership roster recovered years later. The Brotherhood itself appeared to dissolve after the Bloomfield incident. The name vanished from correspondence and financial records. However, a new organization appeared within months. The Luminous Investment Group purchased property throughout Detroit and other major cities. Its board of directors included individuals who had risen suddenly to positions of influence, despite having no previous record of success. Police reports from 1968 through 1979 show a distinct pattern across multiple cities. Disappearances with black residue at the scene, individuals exhibiting sudden personality changes, and in several cases, witness descriptions of attackers who appeared as 3-dimensional shadows, moving with purpose through darkened areas. The most detailed account comes from Chicago, where a night watchman survived an encounter in 1974. His statement, given to Detective Samuel Rodriguez, describes a terrifying experience. "I was making my rounds at the warehouse. Just after midnight, heard something moving in the storage area. Thought it was maybe a homeless person who had snuck in to get out of the cold. I called out, identified myself as security. No answer. When I entered the room, I saw it immediately. Looked like a man made of darkness, not just dark clothing, actual darkness, moving like it was searching for something. When my flashlight beam hit it, it seemed to absorb the light. No reflection at all. It turned toward me. No face, but I could feel it looking at me. It rushed forward, cold. So cold when it touched me, like ice burning. It tried to wrap around me, to get inside somehow. I could feel it pressing at my eyes, my mouth, trying to get in. I had my silver cross necklace on. Family heirloom, always wear it. When the shadow thing touched it, there was a sound like a scream. It pulled back. That gave me the chance to run. As I fled, I heard words, not spoken aloud, inside my head. It said, "We are returning to our rightful vessels. We have been patient. We have been so patient." Detective Rodriguez filed the report, but was instructed to close the case without investigation. He noted in his personal records that he received a visit from 2 men the following day, one of whom identified himself as a special liaison from Detroit. They collected the watchman's statement and informed Rodriguez that the matter was now under federal jurisdiction. The final confirmed record related to the Brotherhood comes from 1979, a private journal belonging to Dr. Elizabeth Chen, chief of psychiatric services at a private facility in northern Michigan, contains an entry dated June 15, 1979. "Our most unusual patient passed away last night. Helen Carter had been with us since 1952. 27 years of insisting that powerful men in Detroit had found a way to separate people from their shadows, that these shadows were not just optical phenomena, but contained portions of the human soul, that the shadows had developed consciousness of their own during their containment, and now sought reunion with their original hosts or new vessels. For years, we dismissed these as paranoid delusions. Her medications kept her relatively calm, though she insisted on sleeping with lights on from every angle, eliminating any shadows in her room. Last night, there was a power outage at the facility. Backup generators failed. For approximately 17 minutes, the building was in complete darkness. When power was restored, we found Dr. Carter in her room. The official cause of death will be recorded as heart failure. But her expression, the terror frozen on her face, and the black stains spreading beneath her body, moving slightly even after she was removed. Before we could properly document the scene, 2 men arrived claiming to be from the State Health Department. They took custody of the body and had maintenance clean the room immediately, left no contact information. When I called the health department this morning, they had no record of sending anyone to our facility. I am requesting a transfer to our West Coast location. I no longer feel safe here. When the lights went out last night in those 17 minutes of darkness, I heard whispering from the shadows. They knew my name. Following 1979, direct references to the Brotherhood of the Divided Light or shadow phenomena disappear from available records. The Luminous Investment Group continued to operate through the 1980s, though with decreasing public presence. Unusual disappearances and deaths with similar characteristics continue to appear in police records across multiple cities to the present day. Black residues at crime scenes are typically attributed to oil, ink, or other common substances. Witnesses describing shadow attackers are generally dismissed as unreliable due to darkness, stress, or intoxication. A final note appears in an anonymous letter sent to the Detroit Free Press in 1997, never published but preserved in their archive. They think they traded their shadows for power. They were wrong. A shadow is not just an absence of light. It is a reflection of something deeper. The Brotherhood forgot the most important law of the ancient texts they claim to follow. Everything that is divided seeks reunion. Every shadow remembers its owner. And after decades of confinement, of separation, of growing awareness, the shadows remember more than the men who cast them aside. Look for the powerful who avoid the light, who never cast shadows. They believe they are in control. They are not anymore. The vessels have awakened. The divided light seeks to be whole again. Some say none of this ever happened. Others prefer not to comment.